I would like to do a brief review of just some of the important things. I'm gonna spend more time today on stream. Thankfully, I have a little bit more time today than usual. But yeah, I'm gonna talk a little bit about things that you guys should remember if you're beginning, if you're drawing, if you're just starting out drawing, you want to learn good habits, and these are the good habits that I'm about to talk about. Where are you? And this is going to be the last page for this entire book, for this entire sketchbook. I'm pretty excited about it. I'm going to be coming back to it for drawing comics and coloring and inking and stuff, but when it comes to drawing basics, I'm going to start a new sketchbook this week, so it's going to be pretty cool. It's like 3 years. I'm just skipping through here. Okay, here it goes. Yeah, it's a 3-year sketchbook. It's pretty exciting to close it and move on to a new one and start fresh. So yeah, excellent ways for you guys to practice and get better. Get yourself one of these. It's pretty light, it's flexible, you can put it in your pocket. Something I mentioned pretty often whenever I do the reviews. I think it's important to just always draw. If you guys missed it, I did a video on John Buscema. It was the very first episode, or stream rather, of drawing comics, and it's a 5-minute reel talking about John Buscema and his work, and this is something you guys are seeing here as well. Maybe studying his work, reading his work, that sort of thing. An amazing, legendary artist. Absolutely amazing. Every time I look at it, I'm very inspired by his work, and I just admire his dedication. And that's where I was getting to, is that he was always drawing. His brother, Sal Buscema, was talking about it, that he just ate, slept, and breathed drawing. He was constantly drawing, and this is what enabled him to draw such cool figures, beautiful figures, being able to draw animals, being able to draw backgrounds, and pumping out 2 issues per month. So that's 60 pages of pencil work with this level of detail, that great understanding of anatomy, perspective, storytelling, pretty much all that, because he spends so much time drawing. So, having this kind of inspires you to do it. You always know that you have a sketchbook on you. You can go, when you're sitting public transportation, or if you have some idle time during work or school or whatnot, you could sit and just doodle, draw the stuff. And this is a perfect opportunity to practice things like perfecting drawing the circle. This is something I mention very often. It's very important. You don't want to have a lopsided head. This is an example of that, especially considering that the head is the unit of measurement for the entire body. You're going to be using it. Let's see it. No, it's here somewhere. There you go. This is just demonstrating how the head fits into all different parts of the body, and it's the easiest way to be able to make sure everything is proportionate. Now, of course, you're not going to be drawing characters like this all the time in this angle, but what you're doing is you're getting your eye used to the proportions looking right. It's just something that happens. It's the same thing as like when you're learning the alphabet. You don't have to recite the alphabet every time you read now, right? You just know it. You know certain words because you've said them so many times. So the same thing happens visually here. You become so used to the right proportions that when things are off, you know how to correct it. You know where to correct it. So it just becomes something like almost second nature. You have such a good understanding, it becomes lightning fast for you to be able to recognize what's wrong. So, and with that, you could use the proximity of your understanding for different angles. Like if you're doing something at a different pose, or the tilt of the body or the face or whatever it is, you just kind of can estimate based on your understanding of all these different principles when it comes to proportion, when it comes to anatomy, when it comes to the face features and balancing things out. When we're talking about the guidelines here, when you're using the crosshair for the face or for the entire body, that basically allows you to understand the proportion and balance. You don't want to have one eye higher than the other. That's going to throw off everything. You spend all the time shading, you spend all the time putting in all the little details and really getting down to like nitty gritty stuff, drawing all the pores or whatever. But if the eye is lower than the other or bigger than the other in that specific point of view, it's gonna be useless. You're covering up a bad drawing basically. So you want to make sure that you understand all these principles as best as you can. Make sure that things do line up, that one ear isn't higher than the other when it comes to that. And that ability trains your eye to see detail. So it's really important to use these guidelines in order to train your eye to see that. In the beginning especially. It's your alphabet. You're learning your alphabet. You won't need to recite it every time, but right now this is the stage where you just have to repeat it over and over again, draw things over and over again until it becomes second nature almost. You will just automatically spot what's wrong and want to correct it. So this page is available on Patreon. You could download it, you could print it, you could have it side by side with you when you're practicing. I won't go over everything immediately now. I do want to jump into the stream and draw more. But yeah, you could download this and you can have it there. You could draw from it. You can copy it over and over again to get a better understanding of the human figure and all these measurements. But yeah, just talking about, practicing the circle and making sure that it's right. You don't want it to be lopsided. It's gonna throw off everything in the body. If you're using the head as a unit of measurement, you could see here, this is an example of it, because it's not drawn out well, because this side is like a lot wider than this side, you're going to use it. One of the unit of measurements is half a head is equivalent to the width of the arm. So in this case, you're measuring half a head and it lines up. It makes sense. But what doesn't make sense is that it doesn't correspond to the other side at all. Like, it's completely way more wide than the other. It's almost double the width. And that's all because of the fact that you didn't draw a perfect circle for the head. You didn't draw the head properly, so it just kind of throws off the balance of everything else on here, and it just looks wrong. And this is an example of also not drawing the head right, not drawing the circle right, and giving it like an oblong shape. And since you're using the head as the unit of measurement, everything else starts to be elongated because of that. So you can see how it ripples. Since you're going to start with the head, you're going to be using it as a unit of measurement. It ripples through the entire body and it creates a bad drawing basically. So it's very important to practice that. And having the sketchbook is perfect for just that. It's kind of mindless. You're sitting there, you're drawing it over. You could practice your shading on it, drawing from highlights, midtones to shadows over such a simple shape. You're also gaining that. You're also training yourself not to press hard on a pencil, giving it the death grip, not holding it too close to the tip, because that blocks your vision of everything else, and it also obstructs your range of motion. Notice how when I'm doing this, look at how much my arm is moving, my hand is moving to get more coverage. Whereas here, it really comes down to your fingers just moving up and down, and you get way more coverage. So that's the advantage of that. And also, it's more of a loose sort of experience. You could see your entire drawing when you're keeping your pencil at a distance. It takes some time getting used to, but that's the benefit of teaching yourself this good habit, all these benefits. You draw loosely, you sketch out, and you could see the entire drawing as you're sketching it. Yeah, that's the majority of it. I'm not going to go way more into detail with it, but you could do that. You could practice the cylinder shape, another perfect shape to teach yourself, because as you can see, it's pretty much part of the entire human body. You know, you break it down to more simple forms, which is the idea, which is why you want to learn the cylinder shape. You don't want to tackle the most complicated muscles. You know, that's going to be intimidating. You don't know where it's going to lead to if you don't sketch out the entire figure. It might end up being way bigger or falling off the page, you know, that sort of thing. But if you simplify it, it kind of makes it less intimidating. You're just drawing cylinder shapes all over to give the body some sort of structure, to give yourself something to work within, rather than just free-flowing it and then finding out things are disproportionate to each other after spending all that time and putting in all the details and that sort of thing. You end up feeling like, oh man, what a waste. And that's what people end up doing, is they cover it up with detail because they don't want to go back and fix that problem. I'm not going to say everybody, but a lot of people, a lot of beginners make that mistake. They see something is off, and rather than trying to really correct it, or trying to see where it's wrong, what's proportionally off, they try to put in more and more work to try to like cover it up in a sense. And it's always obvious. You know, the only person you're fooling is pretty much yourself by doing that. Everybody else notices like, there is something wrong here. Now, I'm not trying to discourage you guys from putting in more effort into your drawings. I just want you guys to focus more on anatomy and proportion and noticing these features. Everything is important to do. Even if you do continue to put in more detail, that's great, but it's important to also incorporate that into your drawing. Think of it as stretching. You know, before you jump into lifting the heaviest weights, you want to first stretch your muscles to make sure there's no injury. You want to prepare yourself properly before you start doing more difficult work. So the same idea goes here. You want to incorporate this, you know, practicing basic shapes, practicing simplifying the figure as much as possible, drawing lightly, that sort of thing, into your stretches. So that way you can build on it day after day, even with working on more detail-oriented work, you know, more getting into your own personal projects, whether perfect or imperfect it is. It's all great. As long as you're drawing, as long as you're putting in effort, it's all uphill. You're really building yourself up. So anyways, guys, I'm not going to spend way more time on this. This was meant to be more of like a brief overview. You could also check out the previous streams. I do tend to do the review once, well, like twice a week, rather, like every other day, like Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, sometimes just Mondays and Wednesdays. I do think it's important to keep it fresh in your mind, to remind yourself, these are my goals for now. If you're a beginner, if you're still learning all this stuff, just to keep refreshing that, because sometimes we forget. You know, there's a lot of things that go on in our schedule. To remember all that stuff becomes a bit overwhelming, so it's nice to have that reminder there. Anyways, let's jump into drawing the face. So I was just showing different, well, as it is in the book, they're showing different angles of the face and what kind of changes along with it. So if this is a bottom view, like the camera is coming from the bottom up, basically, or the head is tilting upwards, basically, this is what happens to the face. You could see that the ears start to get lower. The nose starts to go further up, and the distance between the eye and the nostrils becomes shorter. Because the head is round and it has like curvature to it, the further up it goes, the further it curves away from the viewer, it curves away from the camera. And because of that curve, because of its of it getting further and further away, certain features start to cover up other features. This becomes shorter, the bridge of the nose becomes shorter the further up it goes. The distance between the nostril and the eye, very important detail, becomes shorter. And the curvature of the eyes changes. So it starts to curve upwards as well. So a lot of things start to curve upwards. The nose, the lips as well, the eyes, they all tend to curve upwards as the head turns up. And the ears start to get lower in perspective. They start lower. Well, really what they're doing is they're just tilting back. And because of the curvature again, they tend to seem as if they're going further down. But in a straight shot, and you could see here, with the head going downwards, that the ears actually start going higher. See how over here the earlobe is much lower than the nose? Whereas here, as you could see, this guideline right here is to show how the earlobes sit on the line while being above the nose. So this is like the tip of the nose, and you could see like the earlobes are resting above it. Whereas here, it's the other way around. The earlobes are resting below the nose because of that perspective. So it's these little details that help make sure you build the perspective correctly. Looking out for these things, making sure you include these guidelines so that things don't seem distorted or warped. Like maybe you're going to end up drawing the eye lower than the other eye, and that's going to, like I was mentioning earlier, that's going to throw your whole drawing off. And then the same thing for, the nose and the lips. From one side to the other, you want to make sure they're sitting properly, and that one isn't higher or lower. The benefit of having the line going down the middle is you're able to compare and see that as well. It kind of simplifies things again, in order for your eye to catch this difference, in the comparison. And also, you don't want to draw, let's say, the eyes a little too far to the left and the nose to the right. All this stuff, as I mentioned, makes your drawing look broken in a sense. So, these guidelines are important. And again, you're training your eye to get used to seeing things in proportion, to being able to notice and spot these details. And then use the proximity of that understanding for other perspectives. So I'm going to jump into the 3/4 view. I'm keeping it light. And notice how the center line is now making curve. And so basically the crosshair is curving. To give the face some dimension, I added this line right here to show that this is where the head starts to kind of curve more inwards. So I'm going to do the same thing here. But this time, I'm going to add more detail. Curvature here. And I like to include the lines for the mouth, for the nose, for the eyes, sometimes even eyebrows, whatever helps get things in perspective. That's really the goal. And you're trying to save yourself as much time having to wrestle with that as possible. So like, if you need to draw more lines to give yourself a better understanding of like the space difference between each other, between all the face features, for example, go for it. That's really the goal. Like, as I mentioned, is to get better understanding of the human figure. And as I mentioned before, you won't need to draw these guidelines. You're just trying to train yourself to see things in proportion, so that way you won't have to rely on it so heavily. And you'll see a lot of artists, professional artists, who went in full circle. Basically, they would start out drawing basically the outlines of their subject, to drawing things like this with guidelines and sketching things out, making sure things are proportionate, to coming back to just drawing things out from whatever point. But this time, everything looks right because their eye is so well trained to see the anatomy and proportion of their subject. So that's what you're basically training yourself to do now. It's a learning process, and you're in that stage, trying to develop that really good, solid understanding of the figure, the face features, proportion. Because if you plan on drawing people, you're going to come across this problem. And even though you haven't practiced it this way, you're still going to have to wrestle with it. You're still going to have to wrestle with proportion and anatomy and understanding what's wrong with your drawing. So rather than just wrestling with it, just hoping that you'll eventually figure it out, you're teaching yourself all this to save yourself all that time. Also notice how, once again, when you drew the head and you made the circle for it, that's not the line for the hair as well, where the hair is basically where it ends, and the hair sits on top of it. So make sure that you draw the hair over it. Otherwise, you're gonna have a shrunken head, like a big face but a shrunken head. If you follow that first circle line that you made as like the end of the hair in a sense, or the surface of the external surface of it. If you're gonna make a mistake with drawing hair, it's better that it's much bigger or the head is wider than it is more narrow, because that's another thing that a lot of people make as a mistake is drawing the head a little too narrow. I'm also gonna sketch out these other examples here because I think they give a good demonstration of the head in a different angle and how the guidelines kind of shift from that. This is something that was similar. You get to see how the tip of the nose really is the end point for the ears as well, and how the ears start right where the eyebrows are, not higher or lower. That's a good approximation. So you could see how these principles really carry over, as I was mentioning before. They carry over into other perspectives as well. Like once you understand the position of the ears in relation to other parts of the face, it becomes easier to kind of eye where they would be if the head was to be in a different angle. So just another perfect example of that. Like even though it's not a straight on shot, because you understand the placement, you can maintain the proportion properly. And these lines kind of help understand the curvature of the head, because it's important, besides just understanding it verbally, to also understand it visually and also physically, being able to just get a better grasp of it. So the more you draw it in different angles, the better understanding of the entire figure is going to be. have the line for the head. And I'm giving a little bit more definition just to show once again how the hair sits on top of that line, not within it. These lines just give you a better understanding of the head three-dimensionally as well. So unfortunately, ladies and gents, this is going to be the end of the drawing basics stream for tonight. I will be back tomorrow for the same thing. I'm not going to be doing a review as long, or the next review is going to be Wednesday, and I'm going to try to keep it shorter. That way I could get more done drawing. I'm going to be taking a 5-minute break, and I will be back for drawing comics, where I have some interesting new content that I'm going to share with you guys. I'm pretty excited about that, so make sure you stick around. If you guys enjoy the content, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. They both help the stream grow and reach out to more people. So yeah, with that said, y'all, I'll be back in 5.